the truest story about how one of the greatest and most addictive video games of all time made it from Russia all around the world. Remember back when Moneyball came out and was more about baseball statistics than baseball, but somehow it was still really interesting? Well, this new Tetris movie is very similar. It's more about contract negotiation and foreign relations than it is about Tetris, but it's still very interesting. Taron Egerton, who I know best as playing Elton John in Rocket Man, pulls out all of the charm in his role as Henk Rogers, the American salesman who risked everything to bring Tetris around the world. Now, even if he's doing this just to get rich, he still has a heart and he wants to do right by all of the parties involved. Now, between Ted Lasso and Henk Rogers, I think maybe the mustache is making a comeback. Much like most modern biopics, this is really just hitting the highlights of the contract negotiations and stories between Henk Rogers, a rival company that's full of rich, corrupt leadership, and the Soviet government. The story itself is surprisingly interesting, and in my opinion, it didn't need a made-up car chase to make the movie better. Now, as someone who's played my fair share of Tetris, I was kind of disappointed that we didn't see more of the game. It reminded me of The Wizard, a movie about Nintendo that features surprisingly little Nintendo playing. We did, however, get a couple of glimpses of Tetris and even a short scene between Henk Rogers and Alexei, the creator of Tetris, making code changes to make the game even better. Now, honestly, I would watch an entire movie on Alexei and just hearing how he came up with the game and the changes that he made along the way to make it arguably the greatest video game ever made. It's like Othello. You can learn to play it in under 5 minutes and then you can spend the next 100 years trying to master it. There is a surprisingly great documentary from 2011 called Ecstasy of Order, and it is about competitive Tetris players. The entire documentary features the best of the best Tetris players from around the world who are all trying to determine if it's even possible to get to level 30 in Tetris on the Nintendo Entertainment System. A decade later, almost every single competitive Tetris player can get well past level 30. Seriously, this 40-year-old game still has secrets and skills to uncover. That's pretty incredible. Now, throughout the movie Tetris, we see a lot of pixelated scene changes to remind us that this movie is about a video game. It was a neat touch, but I think they went a little bit overboard with it. Now, even so, Tetris is a surprisingly entertaining movie. You do not need to be a fan of the video game or video games in general. You do not need to be a fan of foreign relations or contract negotiations or any of the other stuff that's featured in this movie. It is way better than a movie about these topics has any right to be. Car chases that probably didn't really happen. Getting a glimpse at the original version of Tetris. Pixelated scene changes. Seeing a little Tetris gameplay. Johnny Tran from Fast and the Furious as an executive. The Soviet Union.